The meta ban continues. Smith goes to Florida. Carney speaks to Trump. And of course, election 2025, which is kind of dominating our coverage right now. I'm Jim Check with Now Media, and Ian Burns on the phone with me from Ottawa, our managing editor. How's it going out there in Ottawa this morning?
It's a cloudy day and it's not very warm, and we've got an ice storm coming soon, so all's well.
It's winter in some areas for sure. It's actually looking quite nice here in the central Okanagan and Kelowna. We can see the traffic flowing very nicely here. And we've switched our thing to Now Media, which is kind of like our parent kind of company, Now Media. So we'll be doing this under the Now Media Group. We're an independent Canadian news outlet here. And we're talking about meta ban, and we are banned from, right now, we are banned from Facebook and Instagram, and we had the largest social media footprint in the central Okanagan here. And that's been taken away from us going on close to 2 years now. Come June, it'll be 2 years, right? And we get no compensation from the federal government for that. They've just taken away our ability to reach our audience of over 200,000 on Meta.
And then they blamed it all on Mark Zuckerberg and boycotted his companies. They said the federal government was going to usually spend something like $10 million a year on Facebook ads and things like that. And then they said, that's gone now. That's your punishment, Mark Zuckerberg. But in an unexpected change in fortunes, they decided that they were actually going to give Meta money again. So now their relationship is delightful. They're friends. They get what they need out of Facebook. But the steaming pile of garbage that they left in Canada's media scene remains, and we can't use Facebook. So thanks for that. And also they give money to our rivals, or not rivals either. They just give money to basically anyone, any media organization that asks for it, except ones that they don't like, such as ourselves.
Yeah, and it's been tough. It's been very tough. And I did an interview with CBC The National, and they're saying traffic on news outlets is down by more than 50%. Not just us. Traffic is down for us. Traffic is down, and revenues are down more than 50% on most outlets. Many are dying. Like close to 100 have already folded since the 2 years of the meta ban, and more coming. There'll be 3 more in the Lower Mainland here at the end of May, and it's a struggle at best. And the big thing is they said they did this to help media outlets because media outlets were taking all the cash. And then you just started off in the beginning and said, and the federal government spends $10 million on average a year with Meta, and said, why not just give that money, spend the money with local media outlets? But no. And then, obviously, the biggest hypocrisy is that they said they would boycott Meta, and they're back spending money, and still news outlets across Canada. The only, again, Canada has this great claim to fame, the only nation in the G20 that doesn't allow, in the G7 that doesn't allow news on Facebook and Instagram.
And what's amazing about that is Facebook banned news in Canada. Usually it's the other way around. Usually a country bans bans Facebook, but yeah, it's we got punished by Facebook rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and then this academic has said, from assistant professor at McGill University, says most Canadians don't even know that it's banned. So there you go.
Yeah, and he's kind of saying like, and this is obviously true, isn't it? They've kind of become used to algorithms and whatnot, sorting them out. And as he puts it, it's like people are just kind of expect that the news that they need to know will be made available to them as they go about their ordinary business on the internet.
No.
But that is not the case, because if your ordinary business includes, well, really any social media website, but Facebook, obviously, news doesn't even appear there. So they might go there expecting it on a sort of unconscious level, and then it never appears. All of the media outlets that might, like if they turn the TV on or something like that, all those media outlets that might tell them that news has been banned don't really talk about it because they're not affected, because they're being subsidized by the taxpayer, and they don't really want to draw attention to it because they're in the majority of cases they advocated for the for the law that brought about this situation anyway. So they're just like their hands are filthy. They're being subsidized by the taxpayer. They don't even want to go there, you know. They don't want to touch this story. Um, and then they go to X. I mean, this story here that we're talking about has a picture of Elon Musk looking like he's scheming in some way. But you go to X, and it's just like an absolutely garbage website full of slop, full of just like just like the worst possible content you could imagine. People just setting up fake skits and like videos of like frogs jumping around. It's just so stupid. So you're not going to get your news on X, and then what's left? I mean, it's really like a perfect storm. And you mentioned those platforms in the Lower Mainland that have gone under. They're actually Glacier Media, aren't they? So they're not exactly independent. They're owned by a sort of bigger company, and that company is subsidized by us. Our taxes pay for that company, Glacier Media, so that that company can fail and fire reporters. So I mean, what a mess! What a mess we're in.
Yeah, and we're most affected by this because we had, like I said, we had the biggest audience in social media and bigger than the Glacier Media outlet here in Kelowna as well. And that was all taken away from us. And again, and we've appealed to Facebook, we've appealed to the government, we've sent tons of letters. We have letters of support from basically all the MLAs and the leaders of the parties here in British Columbia, except for the NDP. We have the leaders of the other parties. Um, but and then we have lots of support even from our own city council, and yet we get ignored. And Facebook said as well, no. So there we go. There we sit, and the government again is spending on Facebook because they said their rationale for starting to spend on Facebook again was that they see that news is really important on social media, and the only way for them to get their news on social media right now is to pay Meta. It's like almost like a comedy show.
It is like something out of Monty Python or something like that, isn't it? But I mean, it's as well. You have to think of it another way. If this was the outcome, if the outcome you wanted, right, at the beginning, a couple of years ago, if what you wanted to achieve was the suppression of independent news in Canada, and you had to achieve that end in this kind of somewhat liberal democracy that we inhabit, so you can't just do what they would do in Turkey or somewhere like that and just criminalize um, a media outlet or something, or just imprison journalists. You can't do that. So how would you do it? How would you bring it about? And I can't think of a much better strategy than this. I mean, it's almost like a perfect plot. But I'm not saying that that's what it is. But certainly in terms of like the outcome, yeah, you couldn't have done better, could you, if that was what you desired?
Yeah, like so many independent media outlets are gone. Holly Dona Blacklocks has said that the way it's going right now, the select media are being funded, and they're basically becoming a very, very next to becoming an arm of the government, basically a federal department.
And just like everything else to do with the government and politics, they're despised by the population and mistrusted by the population. And then the solution that we're given by politicians, at least in the Liberal Party, is to complain about misinformation and disinformation. That doesn't really cut it, does it? If your own population despises you, despises the media, doesn't want to hear the sort of garbage that you're trying to ram down their throats, it's not really adequate to then just say this is all misinformation. We need to put even tighter regulations so that people can trust the media. No, I mean that's why we're in this pickle in the first place. The reason nobody trusts the media, in Canada at least, is because they know and sometimes think wrongly that the media is funded by the taxpayer. Because we get that, don't they? We
Yeah.
get people who think we're funded by the taxpayer, which is not true. Though it is true of all the other media outlets that you have heard of and might complain about. They all get funded, but we don't.
Yeah, and you can see the bias many times, and it's very clear and apparent, and that's the frustration. I mean, we should run a banner that says all the time, "Not funded by the government, not funded by the government," because we get accused of it all the time, even though we are not funded by the government.
Indeed. But I mean, that's it's quite right though as well for people to be suspicious. Nobody in this life gives money to anyone or anything, any organization, unless they want something in return. That is just a fact of human nature. That's something that you can't. You can't gaslight somebody into thinking that's not true. And to attempt that in this situation is just as futile as in any other situation. The government is pouring taxpayers' money into the pockets of media organizations. Do you really think that they don't want anything in return? I mean, life doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it reminds me of an old Ronald Reagan quote, our situation, where the government is here to help, while they're stepping on our throat and telling us, "Oh yeah, we're here to help you," and and we're saying we
Help
can't
you
breathe.
die.
We're saying we can't breathe, and they're just like, "Yeah, we're here to help you. Pass into
Yeah.
the next life or something," I guess, right? So, Daniel Smith heads to Florida for a U.S. fundraising event at a secret location, apparently. And she's gonna
That's
do.
actually out of date now. She's done it now. So
Oh, there
it's
you go.
been achieved now, and she posted on X not so long ago to say that it was a wonderful success and all the rest of it.
Yeah, she's got interviewed by Ben Shapiro.
Who apparently, according to CTV and Canadian Press and some others, is a member of the far right. So I haven't seen him throwing around swastikas and beating up ethnic minorities, but apparently that's what he is. So beware. If you see Ben Shapiro on the street, everyone, who's like a short nerd who probably quite genuinely probably couldn't fight a raccoon and expect to win. But if you see him, make sure that you run because he's far right.
Yeah, he's also been very supportive of Canada in a lot of his tweets and saying, "Why are we fighting with our partner?" But hey, he definitely is, like you said, the media that gets the funding is definitely doing the work of the, you know.
But also amusing. I mean, even when they're not calling him far right, they're talking about this PragerU thing, which is like a sort of kind of cringy conservative organization that, well, let's not go there, but it's just a conservative organization. They're describing that constantly in all the stories you read as like right wing. And it's like they use this term as a pejorative and they never ever refer to any organization as left wing, let alone like several times in one story of like 400 words, and they get the term right wing. And it's just like the sort of juvenile nature of the press. And it isn't just Canada, but I mean,
I
Christ,
think
it is just so low grade.
I think one of the successes for media and the liberals is that they actually have convinced many people that right wing is a slur. Like it used to be, the conservatives on one side and the liberals on the other side, and then the center, and they never talked about right and left wing. But now, basically, when people use it, they use like you just said, they use right wing as a slur.
But it's also, I mean, let's just set aside the fact that it's basically meaningless now. It doesn't even, it's like very hard to extract any sort of meaning from that, from left wing or right wing. But it's the thing that is more important probably is that it's only ever applied to right wing. It's only ever used as, in the context of right wing. You never hear, for example, have you ever heard Mark Carney described as left wing? I mean, if you're gonna set up Ben Shapiro's right wing, then Mark Carney is left wing. And yet I've never heard that, and nor would you. Or, like Eurasia Group, the organization that Mark Carney's wife works for. Have we heard that described as a left-wing organization? It's like they just wouldn't. Because to them, this is what you need to remember. To the author, to the journalist, and to the editor that supervises and commissions these articles, these sort of people and organizations are not left wing. They're not on any kind of wing. They're just dead center in the middle because they reflect their own views. That's what you have to remember. They are themselves in a different sector of um, the economy or whatever of society. They are exactly their own belief system. And then when they look at somebody like Ben Shapiro, they think, "Oh, that's not my belief system. Let's add this tagline to him, right wing." And it's like, okay, I mean, good for you, but the thing that probably would fix all of this is if they were a lot more open and honest about who they are. The news organizations, the reporters, they're all basically liberal left, as you would expect of college graduates in a place like Canada, who live in urban environments. They're basically liberal left, but they try and pretend that they're in the middle or neutral or whatever, and it's just completely false.
Yeah, and then Danielle Smith taking a lot of heat for going to the States, but she does have one person that says that she should be applauded, and that's Scott Moe of Saskatchewan, and says she's one of Canada's strongest advocates. The goal is to advocate and educate the importance of a trade relationship we have despite the rhetoric, said Scott Moe. So she's got one fan at least, Scott Moe. Saskatchewan and Alberta kind of standing shoulder to shoulder throughout much of what's been happening over the past couple of years too, because they seem to be the ones that get mostly attacked. NDP and BC basically falling in line with the Liberals for the most part all the time, supporting everything that comes out. Other than the one time Premier Eby called the Liberal policies daft. But now was that
That was when, I mean, the context of that is very, very important, isn't it? He was in an election where it looked like he was losing against a Conservative party who was very hostile to the Liberals and Liberal policies. And he was trying to do this this Damascene conversion where he'd suddenly become a centrist or even centre right. And just more importantly than anything, Justin Trudeau was still the Prime Minister. So you couldn't, I mean, to even have your name mentioned in the same sentence as Justin Trudeau then was like, the kiss of death. So he was, he's a politician after all, old Uncle Eby. So, yeah, that's the context of that. I wouldn't expect him to say anything against the Liberal Party right now.
We got a little bit of local news here. We had Kent Mulgat go out there and follow up on the rail trail. We did that video yesterday. We're going to play this video here.
For many, this rail trail encampment has become their address. But with the city's new policy, those days are over.
Starting today, as the ground is remediated, the site footprints will be reduced to 8 feet by 8 feet from 12 feet by 12 feet. This is about working as part of the sheltering continuum and preparing people for shelter and housing options and making homelessness as brief as possible for those who choose to participate. The remainder of the site will then be redesignated for temporary overnight sheltering only, as the site was originally intended. However, we expect those numbers that choose to participate in this to be quite low. The site will be open for use from 5 p.m. daily to 9 a.m. in the morning, and closed otherwise, where the expectation for people will be to pack their belongings and then take the opportunity to benefit from community daytime services at places like Metro Central.
I think it's a waste of taxpayer money, and I think they're just showing off, like they're showing that they can bully us, and we don't really give a shit. We're like, either way, it doesn't matter. Like we get organized and it's nice tight tents or whatever, and then they just want to destroy them so that it looks like we're horrible and that we can't manage to take care of ourselves.
But will a lot of the residents here just go somewhere else?
Yeah, if it's really annoying.
Do you expect that people in the community will see more individuals sleeping in alleyways, doorways, under bridges, etc.?
No, I don't expect so, Kent. What I do expect is that we'll see an increased use of the temporary overnight sheltering site. And again, in doing so, we are satisfying our legal obligations to do so in providing that space. Security will be in the vicinity of that site as well, which will, again, hopefully provide that additional sense of safety and security, and at the very least, reporting.
There you go. That was Ken Mulgat, our reporter that went out to the rail trail. Housing, one of Canada's biggest challenges, I would say even a crisis across this nation, forcing so many people into homelessness over the past 10 years. Again, something that the Liberals don't really like to talk about. But if you've had the steering wheel for 10 years, it's about time to take some responsibility for where we're at.
Well, it was only about a year ago that Justin Trudeau finally caved and acknowledged that housing was in part a federal responsibility. Spent quite a long time pretending that he had no influence.
Yeah, he said it wasn't
housing whatsoever.
Wasn't his responsibility at all. And then they've come up. We did the story just a while ago. They came up with these lofty goals, which in an internal memo said they knew that was completely false, and they just still ran with it and let the media trumpet that out there, talking about all these lofty goals, knowing full well that they were feeding a line of, I guess the word is BS to the public.
Politicians doing that kind of thing? Surely not.
There you go. It was a Holly Dolan Blacklock story, the internal memo. So they acknowledged it in that memo. There you go. A pathologist in Alberta has been sanctioned for COVID-19 comments and ordered to take a course. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta sanctioned that Edmonton pathologist for comments and public statements he made during the pandemic. Dr. Roger Hodgson repeatedly made claims in 2021 about public health measures. And he said masks were ineffective and COVID-19 was the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the unsuspecting public. And so what he's been ordered to do was take a course on influence and advocacy and pay $5,000 to cover hearing costs.
Just spare a thought for this man, because I can just imagine now what that course is going to be like. It's going to be like absolute hell on earth, isn't it? He's going to be sat there like it's just going to be HR basically, like hitting him over the head repeatedly with semi-literate garbage. And he's going to be sitting there as like a highly qualified doctor, just wishing that he was dead, I would imagine. So
If you
I
speak
pity
out,
this fellow.
if you speak out and share your opinion on many things, I mean, even on my LinkedIn post yesterday, I think somebody said, "Who do you report to, and what boards are you on?" So obviously, they're looking for something to target to make sure that we go quietly into the night.
They want to get you on one of these courses, don't they? Just so that you can suffer.
Me and Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson refused to take those courses, and now he's moved to the United States.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, these colleges, they do have a huge amount of power, don't they? And this fella, he's obviously used some pretty fruity language there, and you can kind of understand that he might be told, like, look, come on, chill out a bit or something. But it's just like has to pay thousands of dollars, has to go on this course, which is really just like a humiliation ritual, isn't it? It's like a form of humiliation and torture, almost like mental torture. But I mean, the colleges, they have a crazy amount of power, don't they? It's to inflict this kind of thing, and obviously they can also take your entire livelihood away, can't they? If you're not if you don't comply and you're not obedient enough. I just find it a little bit wacky. And you mentioned Jordan Peterson there, didn't you? He lost his case, didn't he? And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that it meant that he couldn't practice anymore in Ontario, at least. So it's like, obviously he's fine. He's got a lot of money anyway, and it wasn't really practicing, I don't think. But just think of like the ordinary person who loses their livelihood because of this like Napoleonic organization, like these colleges that are just full of busybodies that can ruin people's lives.
Yeah, and then we've got we've got a little clip here from an Instagram account, YEG Wave. This is Edmonton on the White Mud there, just showing you the winter alive and well in much of Canada. You talk about Ottawa getting an ice storm. Here, we'll play this clip here. That looks like a mess. That looks like an
Edmonton makes Ottawa look like Jamaica or something. It's just crazy.
There you go. I just thought we don't see any comments on our YouTube this morning. I'm just wondering if they're not working this morning or not. So let's head into election.
People are in shock that we've said what we've said so far.
There you go. We did switch our brand to Now Media instead of like what we had before, so maybe that's what's maybe they're putting us on a well, they switched the name over. We're going to do election 2025 here. Look at that. We even got like some pro graphics coming in.
That's about as good as you'd find on the American ones, isn't it? Like CNN and all that. So eat your heart out, CNN. Ted Turner, what are you going to do about it?
I've said this over and over again. If you just give us a sliver of CBC's budget, they have a budget of $1.44 billion, which was a record budget for them, and they've asked for another $400 billion. And Pascal St. Onge on her way out the door says, "Well, we can do better than that. We can double your budget." Meanwhile, the independent media can, I guess what the word is they can go quietly into the night because we're not going to give them their Facebook and we're not going to give them any compensation while they fund our competitors.
They can go quietly into the night and they can take their unapproved, unorthodox opinions with them because we don't We don't want to hear that. That's not patriotic in today's Canada to have an opinion that isn't approved by the government. I mean, come on. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to get Trump to take over Canada or something? I thought you were a patriot.
There was somebody on again LinkedIn, because I post quite a bit on LinkedIn. I'd said that this Pierre Poilievre saying Canada's broken is just not patriotic, like you're saying, and all these bad things. And so I just put the clip in there of Justin Trudeau's campaign in 2015, where Justin Trudeau basically campaigned on the idea that his whole thing when he launched his campaign, like Stephen Harper broke Canada and Canada is broken. But it's okay when they say it, but not so much when the other party says it, I guess.
It's also a completely surreal thing to hear from particularly the Liberal Party, because they represent the kind of Whiggish, progressive, dare I say it, left-wing side of politics. If you speak to these people for any length at all, 10 minutes or something like that, they'll basically reveal that their entire worldview is predicated on the idea that the Canada of the past was a kind of evil, totalitarian hellscape where women and non-white people and poor people and all the rest of it had to suffer relentless persecution from some kind of top-hatted monopoly man oligarchy or something like that. That's their whole idea, is that that's what history was like until people like them complained, said, this sucks, fought, protested, all the rest of it, and then turned it into the utopia that we're now lucky enough to live in. That's their entire worldview. And yet now they're saying to somebody that complains about the present Canada, they're now saying, oh no, you're just not a patriot. You're bad mouthing Canada. I mean, is there any sort of attempt to acknowledge that their side has also historically been the whiner, has been the one that's complained and thought that things weren't going well, and then from their perspective fixed it all and made it all great now?
One thing that they're really good at, and I would give credit to Katie Telford again, is that they're really good at marketing and shrieking. And they do that. They basically, not many people like confrontation, and they're very good at it, and they understand that better than almost anybody. And they do these things where they basically try to scream people into silence. And it works for the most part. Like, people have been screamed into silence. And it's kind of like sad that, like, I get attacked a lot on LinkedIn. And it's for just sharing what I believe is a better tomorrow for all Canadians. But and again, we talk about this all the time. Our wealth is beneath our feet, and for 10 years we've done everything we can to suppress that wealth. Yeah. We got a clip here from Mark Carney here. We're going to play on and talking about the Trump tariffs and that.
Let's be clear. We're all on the same page. We won't back down. We will respond forcefully. Nothing is off the table to defend our workers and our country. Now, to my fellow Canadians, I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix.
And he actually had that conversation with Trump today too, right? So we'll come to that though in a bit. So we'll come to that. We had Pierre Poilievre. He was at actually, what's going on here? Yeah, Pierre Poilievre. We're going to play this clip here. He was at a rally here.
But before I go any further, I'm once again, like all Canadian leaders, forced to address yet another attack by President Trump against our economy. Here he goes again, attacking his closest neighbor and America's best friend, with new tariffs that will drive up the cost of living for American consumers and drive down American wages, while damaging a historic friendship, the best trading relationship in the world. My message to President Trump is knock it off. Stop attacking America's friends. Start trading so that we can once again become richer, stronger, and more secure on both sides of the border. That is how we will have the money for stronger military and stronger borders to secure our continent against real threats and real enemies. We will never be the 51st state, but we can once again be friends with the United States if the president reverses course on these disastrous tariff threats.
There you go. And then a tweet by Pierre Poilievre. This is all over. A bunch of outlets are covering this. Not a lot from the funded media, though, but that Mark Carney faces plagiarism accusations for his 1995 Oxford doctoral thesis. And then, like some people are saying that he's taken a lot of Pierre's ideas, which, they're free to take those ideas, I'm sure, but not free to plagiarize a document when you write a thesis, though.
Yeah, this has become a new thing, hasn't it? It's almost like every time there's an election now, you get something like this. Because obviously, I'm pretty sure you can just go and access anybody's theses, can't you? You can go to the university and get hold of them because they're kind of published, and then you just run it through some software to see if it comes up on the plagiarism alarm is sounded. But I mean, obviously, it's easy to make a claim like that. It's a bit harder to actually prove it, so I have to wait and see. I do find it funny though. I have to rewind there to Polyev. I find it very funny that when he's reprimanding Trump and he's saying, "Knock it off." It's like, yeah, that's gonna scare him. I bet he's terrified.
There you
Yeah,
go.
sorry, Pierre. We shouldn't really, should we? I'm sorry, mate. You chin up there, lad. But also Carney, I mean, we missed out the bit that I think was the most dramatic, where he said the relationship is over. The old relationship as we knew it is over. That was pretty melodramatic, wasn't it? But I guess it's also true. But that's what that's what's been the headlines for the last sort of 12 hours or so.
Another platform piece from Pierre Poilievre, too. He says he promises life sentence for the very worst criminals in Canada. Because right now we seem to have a lot of people that just get out the door, right? So he's pledged that if he becomes prime minister, he will ensure that the very worst criminals are in prison for life, and said the following crimes could result in life sentences: 5 or more counts of human trafficking, 10 or more illegal guns, and trafficking fentanyl.
Just have to keep your human trafficking down to 4 and your gun trafficking down to 9. And then you're sorted.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that that you can get up to that number and still not really feel the walls closing in on you.
Well, at present, it seems, otherwise Polyev wouldn't be saying this. At present, you can go over that and not experience
That's what
any
I'm saying.
real
There's no
punishment.
walls closing in on you. And then and if we don't have enough action in Canada, we give some fair time to the Communist Party that's running a candidate here. And this is a Holly Doan Blacklock story. Again, you can go to her site, Blacklocks, and subscribe. $314 a year. She does a lot of original content for sure. And the Communist Party would tax all capital gains. The Communist Party launched its election campaign with a proposal to tax 100% of capital gains. Election of even a single communist could stem the tide of capitalism, the party said. Capitalism, militarism, and the far-right populist and fascist movements are driving towards conventional and nuclear war, genocide, and escalating climate change. Wow, there's a lot of negativity in that party. So
not all that dramatically different from the sort of things you would see on Blue Sky or something like that among, so-called mainstream liberal types. Like I could easily imagine, obviously it's a different country, but I could easily imagine Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez using this kind of language, or even Bernie Sanders, probably. I'm talking about the capitalism, militarism, far-right populist, that bit there.
They said an election of even one communist can help stop the drive to the right, said the party. Look at that. Elizabeth May is looking for some friends there. And I was told that they are running a communist candidate, or somebody that identifies as a communist in the Liberal Party in Alberta. I'm not sure if that's true. I'd have to look at that, but I was told that recently. So
I feel like, you can't seriously call yourself a communist in this year, can you? In this current age, even like, I'm sure if you had a good sit down with them over a nice glass of sake, I'm pretty sure that Xi Jinping would tell you, like, honestly, I'm not even a communist, mate. That stuff's ridiculous. But then here these people are claiming to be full-blown communists. I'm afraid I just don't really believe them. I don't think they are.
Well, it doesn't sound like a party of hope, that's for sure, right? Because it says, like right now we're heading towards conventional nuclear war, genocide, escalating climate change. Sounds like the party of like, oh my God, right? There you go.
I don't disagree with the war bit there. I do think we are kind of at risk of heading towards a war. But I suppose they must be all about Donald Trump right now, then, who seems to want to, go to every possible length to stop wars, even on unfavorable terms to the West, like in Ukraine. So these must be big Trump people.
We got a clip to play for you here. No volume on that, Rommel? There you go. That's good enough for that. And then this is in response. This is out there on X a lot. Is saying that the polls are showing that the Liberals are dramatically leading the Conservatives, and yet you look at the turnouts in the Conservative rallies and then the turnouts in the Liberal rallies. But some people are also saying that a poll done correctly is more representative of Randall sample voters, where like people showing up to a rally are making that that decision on their own to go to this rally. But also, I would say in opposition to that I know that in government type things, nobody shows up when things are going well. Nobody shows up, right, to government events and even elections and that when everything is kind of going well. When you start to see dramatic crowds, that's because they don't believe it's going well.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of talk about this, wasn't there, during the American election? Um, and it ended up sort of the people that were making that argument ended up being vindicated, didn't they? Because they all said, "Look how many people are going to these Trump rallies, that he's going to win," even though the polls suggested that Kamala Harris had the advantage. But in this case, I don't know. I mean, really though, realistically, how many people want to go to a political rally? Even if you're quite sort of enthusiastic about politics, do you want to go to a rally? I mean, it's like I don't know about that. I'm not sure how much
Well, let me
how
put it
much
to you
weight
this.
to put in that.
Let me put it to you this way: like even in a municipal level, like when things are just kind of going along and everybody seems happy, nobody goes to this thing because it's a pain. It's a pain to drive and to walk and to wait and line up and all that stuff. But when something is really negatively happening in your city or local government or something like that, the room is packed because people are outraged. And to me, that's part of it right there, right? When people are motivated to go to these rallies, they're looking for change. That is the big thing. That's what you can take from that, right? Whether the polls are right or wrong. But what I would say to you is when people show up, and then Trump was getting filling fields, right? And then Harris was not, but then Harris figured out a way to do it, and she would put in headliners, and that would draw people. But then she made a mistake by saying, Beyonce. They kind of advertised Beyonce is going to perform, and then Beyonce just shows up and doesn't perform, and actually made a lot of people just very, very angry.
Yeah, who's the headliner for the Liberals then? I think it's pretty much Donald Trump these days, isn't it?
Mike Myers.
Yeah, Mike Myers. Although he hasn't actually turned up yet. They need to get him to do a live one.
Mike Myers. Elbows up.
They'll have to catch him. They'll have to catch him when he's in Canada. I don't know how often that is.
So Carney had that call with the President of the United States, and then there was a reaction as well. Trump just put out this thing on his Truth Social, and it seems very glowing as to what's going on there. I don't know, we'll see.
But as usual with Trump,
you can put up the
he
next
just
slide,
wants to baffle people. He just wants to confuse people, doesn't he? Because this really doesn't make much sense, does it? And it's like, as usual with Donald Trump, you just he keeps you on your toes, doesn't he? So here he is. He's been very nice to Mark Carney. He basically said he wanted him to win the election, and was quite sort of insulting towards Pierre Poilievre. Implied that he was stupid and all the rest of it. And now he's, I mean, I think this is the level of degradation that we've witnessed in the political scene. But we have to look at it as a positive sign and a compliment that he referred to him as prime minister rather than governor. So, I mean, he's obviously trying to lay it on thick, isn't he, with Carney? And I don't pretend to understand why, other than he's just trying to confuse people, I would say.
Yeah, so the top conservative strategist is saying that Polyev needs to focus just on Trump. And he's the one that helped Ford win his third riding. I mean, it was pretty easy for Ford to win. There's no real actual opposition in Ontario for Doug Ford.
Yeah, but he also worked for he worked with Stephen Harper as well, so he's not. This guy has quite a sort of
Mhm.
long history with the various conservative parties. And what he says, I mean, obviously he does this for a living, so we'll let him take center stage. But I have to say that instinctively, I do concur with what he's saying. The issue that has come to dominate absolutely everything in this election is Donald Trump, and that's pretty much all Mark Carney ever talks about. While Pierre Poilievre, as we saw earlier, he like he'll do about like a 30-second preamble where he says like knock it off, Donald, and then he moves on to his admittedly quite substantive policy offering when it comes to domestic policies. That's all he talks about. But this fella, I feel, is correct. This strategist is correct that like it's all well and good having these ideas about domestic policies. Um, like that was certainly a good idea like 6 months ago or something like that. But it's not really good enough when everybody is thinking about one issue and he's not really spending much time on that issue.
Yeah, just one of the things, one of the comments there, somebody asked if we rebranded. Our parent brand has always been Now Media Group, and that's all our email addresses as well, Now Media Group. And so we're just, because Ian and I talk a lot about more national issues instead of like a regional thing. So we've rebranded our YouTube channel. We're going to probably rebrand a lot of the stuff into our parent company, which is Now Media Group. And the plan was at one point to roll this thing across Canada. Prior to COVID, we had even had started working with financiers and stuff like that, and going public and all that to get money in that. And then COVID punched us in the face pretty good, so we kind of shelved those plans. And then Bill C-18 basically pulled the rug from out underneath us. And they basically taken away our audience on Facebook and Meta, which was a very large audience, and then funded our competition. So there you go.
Good times.
Good times. Good times. Like, yeah, good times. So anybody that likes what we're doing here, you share, subscribe, and share it out there. Get more people watching, because we're doing this. We believe what we're doing is good and different than what you're seeing on most outlets. We're actually trying to communicate with people that are, even writing comments and that, whereas you don't get a lot of ability to talk back in many of the other news outlets. They basically turn off their comments and everything. So it is definitely different. And we try to be different. There you go. And you put in a couple of stats here, or charts. Why don't you go through them for us?
Well, I just thought this makes sense after what we just discussed, didn't we? We just talking there about how Poilievre is being criticized for not focusing on Trump, and then which is the main election issue. And then you look at this. This is from Abacus Data, which is a polling company. This is what people think the Liberals will do if they win the election. And number one there is the economy. Manage the economy through a difficult period. I mean, that is pretty great to have that in your to be considered to be the one that would fix the economy. That usually decides who wins an election. And then, I mean, make it harder to own a gun. But that's a bit of a weird one. Climate change, again, that's hit or miss really. But then number 4 there, protect Canadian workers from the impact of Trump's tariffs. So that's like, and then another good one is take Canada in a different direction than Justin Trudeau. So I mean, the Liberals there are doing very well. They'll be very pleased with this. But then if you look at the next one, this is what people think the Conservatives would do if they won an election. And it's all stuff that like nobody really cares about. I mean, it's eliminate the carbon tax. That's already been done, but okay. So that's the main message that Pierre Poilievre has managed to get out, carbon tax, which has kind of been neutered as a policy, even though there is the industrial side of it still. But then the next one is cut funding to the English language CBC. I mean, that's one of Pierre Poilievre's policies, but he really wouldn't want that to be like the second thing that people think of that his government would do if it was elected. And then it's like, get rid of dental care, get rid of childcare. make it harder to get an abortion. I mean, none of this is what you want up there if you're in the Conservative Party. And then there's nothing about Trump. And there's also nothing about the economy. And Pierre Poilievre's number one policy, really, or his number one ambition is to improve the economy. That's what he talks about all the time, to make Canada into like a fortress and all the rest of it, cut taxes. That's his main policy, and it's not even on here. Which, I mean, that's like damning, And this is the kind of stuff that the likes of that guy that we were just talking about. This is the kind of stuff that they look at when they come out and make their pronouncements about how a campaign is going. And I just think, yeah, if you want to know why Pierre Poilievre, his campaign is apparently floundering, this is why. Because he's not getting his main points across, and actually, on the contrary, he's getting like peripheral points, and in some cases, just purely false things, like this idea that he's going to make it harder for women to have an abortion. He's never said anything about that.
Yeah, the same goes for
It's like it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the Tories. This.
So I guess you could also wonder, who did the poll, because it does seem to be like there's a couple things in there that aren't even true. But if that's the perception, I mean, it depends on the poll. Like polls can be misleading, and we've seen that for sure.
But I think there's a certain amount of like we can at least say that it's probably right there at the top, the carbon tax thing, because that was what his whole campaign was kind of hinged upon, and that is, that's bad news that's number one, because it shouldn't be number one now, because the politics have moved on. The campaign's moved past that now, and he needs to get his main points at the top of that list, like cost of living, economic independence, personal liberty. That's what when he announced his campaign a couple of years ago, when he announced his candidacy to lead the Conservative Party, it was all about freedom. It was all about liberty, but we don't really hear him talk about that anymore. It's not there. It's kind of, I just feel like it's been a curse for Pierre Poilievre, this like 18 months that he's spent ahead in the polls. I think it's ended up actually really damaging his campaign, because he's become a little bit complacent maybe, and now he's got so much work to do, and he's got a month to do it in.
Yeah, just got dark in here. Let's move on to markets.
Disapproves of what we're saying.
There you go. Let's move on to markets. Gold rocking this morning, rocking up the charts. 3075 this morning in US dollars, and 4407 in Canadian dollars. Wow, pretty impressive indeed. I guess we haven't paid our electric bill here. There you go. Crypto, again, just kind of like hanging around in there, not doing much, but it looks like it wants to climb higher. And then the Canadian dollar, not liking those tariff talks, back below 70 cents after just climbing above 70 cents. Kind of range bound until we get an election. Until we get some real results, we're likely to be range bound.
Yeah, it looks pretty clueless, doesn't it, at the minute? It's been like that for at least, a couple of months or something like that.
Yeah. We got some in our AI and tech section here. We got a little AI thing here of the Sony flying car. Like, there you go. Let's have a little play of this clip here. There we go. We got some lights back. Look at that, eh? Guess somebody ran.
What is that? Is that a drone or something that is made to look like a car?
I believe it's AI created.
Oh, okay. So it's I've been fooled.
It looks like Batman took the wheels off.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you could knock out something like that using the kind of drone tech with just propellers and stuff.
Both
But I don't
Sony
know
and
if you'd want to sit in it.
Both Sony and Apple were going to make a car, but then they bailed too, right? So there you go. Again, we talk about auto tariffs, and Canada doesn't make its own cars. Canada has U.S. automakers and some Japanese automakers in Canada. So when people talk about when Carney was saying that, Canada automakers, like we don't have any automakers. Like I said, Bricklin closed down, which was in Newfoundland. Bricklin might make it today if it was still around. It would be a good competition for the Cybertruck. Stainless steel.
Yeah, or the other one, the taxi.
Cybercab?
Yeah, kind of got a bit of that sort of vibe, hasn't it?
Yeah. Like I said, both Sony and Apple were going to make cars, and then they realized concept cars easy, production not so much. Tough to make. Elon Musk said that Tesla, even though it is the most American-made car in the United States, I think it's close to 80% American-made, and Ford and GM are below that. I think they're below the 50% mark. Even I think Honda's higher than that for American-made, for making cars in America. And one of the things they were talking about in the tariffs was that what they're saying is that they want, like even the parts for the Canadian ones, not to be sourced from China and that. So I don't know. There's a lot in that document from the government saying, from the U.S. government, the White House saying, like a lot of the Canadian parts are coming actually from China. So a lot to dig through because making a car is complicated. Like we just said, like making a concept car, a concept car, easy. Producing cars, harder. And then we don't have a picture for this one, but GMC Sierra, the Denali, is saying they're going to have a 460-mile range on their cars, which is over like 700 kilometers on their pickup truck, and it's going to be tow up to 10,000 pounds too.
That's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, like their Hummer, massive battery, massive truck. There you go.
How many lithium mines do you have to empty to build one of those gigantic batteries, I wonder?
We don't know. And there you go. We had light, now we had another light go.
It's artistic.
It's like a comedy show happening live here in our studio here for Now Media. Big news! We're actually going to be part of it. We're sponsoring this event as well, and we're trying to get an interview as well. Sophie Trudeau is going to be here in Kelowna on April 2nd from 7 to 8 o'clock at the Kelowna Event Center. And if you want, you can go on Kelowna Now. The story's on there. You can buy yourself some tickets, and you can ask Sophie what's going on. Where's Justin at Canadian Tire, or what's he doing?
I wonder if that topic is going to be off limits, though. You just have to ask her about her own life, maybe.
She doesn't want to talk politics at all. So there you go. Like, we are trying to get an interview, and it sounds hopeful. So there you go. We'll let you know as it moves along.
She was a journalist, wasn't she? So she's very, very used to being interviewed, I imagine.
And like I said, we're one of the sponsors of the event, so that's great. And there you go. On to the meme section. Who doesn't love a good meme, right? Cutbacks everywhere. And after massive Disney layoffs, Snow White cut back to just 3 dwarves. I don't even think
that's been that's if you look on I don't know if you care about IMDb, Internet Movie Database, but the new one, the one that the controversial one is now officially, I believe, the worst rated sort of major film on that website. It's got like 1.6 out of 10 or something. So bad times.
It has not done well, and the outspoken I can't remember her name. Isn't it Rachel or something?
Yeah, Rachel Zegler, something.
She's been very outspoken against Donald Trump and using the one finger salute and all that stuff. Hasn't helped at all, and in some of the storyline is definitely not what Disney. They've kind of rewritten the storyline, so not a
it's weird, bit of a weird casting decision as well, considering that Snow White is supposed to be like, in the myth or whatever, the story, the fairy tale, she's supposed to be kind of like stunningly, almost like ethereally beautiful, like some sort of like river nymph or something like that, just like an immensely beautiful female. And whatever other talents this girl has, that's not something that you can say about her, I don't think. So right off the bat, it was a pretty weird casting decision, I think.
Well, I watched her promotion for it or whatever, or her speaking about it. She said it's kind of a weird film because, like, the hero in the movie actually is a stalker and stalking her. I'm just like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's an attempt. Like the world has changed an awful lot, hasn't it, in the last 5 years or whatever. Like maybe that would have gone down in 2020, and I just wonder if they've been caught at the wrong time. Like they've come out with a 2020
Yeah.
idea there, and she's tried to promote it very much in the 2020 style. But it's like when we're not there anymore. It's only 5 years ago, but we're in a completely different era now, where if you come out with that sort of stuff, you will
And
be punished.
Disney said that as well. They said that, they've switched their focus back to what was more traditional values. But this stuff was in the can, they said. This stuff was already in the can, and it was due to come out, like you said, it was based on what was going on in 2020. And now that stuff has changed, and so they've got some stuff that's in the can. Obviously, they should have left it in the can because it's showing in the reviews and in the box office. So, and
Yeah,
this
and they've had a couple of those, haven't they? They've taken a few body blows in recent years, so they can't keep doing this. Even a company as powerful as them.
I mean, a couple more of those, and people will be, like, in Chrystia Freeland's word, unsubscribing from Disney.
Oh, they'll subscribe, but they'll only watch films made, 1980 and earlier.
And then here's another one. The absolute psychopath lets microwave count down all the way to 0. Do you wait for it to go to 0?
I mean, I'm very loath to do that. If that ever happens to me, I consider that a personal defeat. It'll take me some time to get over that when it does happen.
I
I just
wait
don't
for
want to
the
hear the beep. It's the beep that I just really don't want it.
I wait for the sparks to start flying before I open the door.
What's worse as well, and this is what another psychopath, possibly an even more like mentally ill psychopath, would like freely let the fridge stay open long enough to beep. Because that for me has to be that's a kind of defeat that I just can't recover from. If I leave the fridge door open long enough to be beeped
We're
at,
we're
it's
not
just
going to
like
show
I
you.
might as well go to bed.
We're not going to show you the last one yet, so hang on, Rommel, because it's the doozy, and this is really, you're going to love this last one, but don't show it yet, because I have a do. When I was working at the sawmill, working in the mill in northern Alberta, my regular lunch almost for like 3 or 4 years was like a couple of hot dogs and a packet of Tang. And I would, because the microwave was a disaster. Microwaves are just kind of coming out at the time. Microwave was just a disaster because imagine that a crew of 75 people using one microwave, what it must look like inside, and nobody ever cleaned it. And so I would put my hot dogs on top of the Tang package, the powdered, the stuff the astronauts used to, and then not realizing that thing was basically tinfoil back then, and you would get like a pretty good light show inside the microwave.
Yeah, might
Yeah.
even have your genome modified as well if you're lucky enough.
And here's the one that you're going to love, and this is from your friend and comrade there, British Prime Minister Keir Strachan. Says now pulling the sword of King Arthur's sword is dangerous from the stone, and he announces.
What an absolute plonker he looks like, by the way. Just look at his silly little face there.
King Arthur would not survive in today's England. King Arthur would be in jail for inciting violence.
Well, King Arthur was a Christian warrior who was trying to protect the native people of Britain, as he saw it, from invading foreigners. That's what the King Arthur story is about. So absolutely 100% he would have been imprisoned forever for
Yeah,
even
he would.
opening his mouth.
Yeah, he would have for many reasons, even including maybe making a meme and stuff like that, right? So poor King Arthur and
Yeah.
Merlin would have been in trouble as well.
Merlin would have been done right away for hacking or something, or get misinformation or something.
Yeah, so there you go. The England turns its back on the legends that made it. There you go.
This is a story. This story, by the way, I don't know if we have to explain. Probably we do. But the British government has just banned what it calls ninja swords because some, random kid somewhere killed another kid with what they want to call a ninja sword. So obviously, rather than have a look at why such a thing might occur, they've just thought, oh, we'll just ban it then. So that the next such act will take place with a kitchen knife, obviously, or whatever it is.
I think
So
that
and then they'll have to ban kitchen knives because that's how smart they are.
I think the thing to do in England right now is to actually make up your itinerary for the day, your agenda, and what you're going to do, and then phone the government and ask what is and is not allowed on that day.
Yeah. And isn't that so tragic that that's actually true and that resonates what you've just said? Because the English, if they're famous for anything other than their banter, their humor, it's for creating a legal system where everything that was not explicitly forbidden was permitted. That's the English legal system. And isn't that beautiful? It's a glorious achievement, isn't it, for any civilization ever? That's just so remarkable. And yet now you can make that joke, which is the exact opposite of what the English legal system was supposed to be. And it's true to an extent, at least. There's a truth to that. And it's just so tragic and it's so upsetting, especially when you consider that Keir Starmer is a lawyer. He's considered to be quite a sort of excellent lawyer. I think he's probably overrated, like most people, but there he is, this defender of the law, and he's kind of subverting the ancient principles of the English legal system. How sad is that?
Yeah, I think in the Robin Hood story, we know which side of the place he'd be playing, the Sheriff of Nottingham, for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the Sheriff of Nottingham at least comes across as quite competent in his evil, doesn't he? He knows what he's doing. He's able to actually achieve things. Whereas Keir Starmer, as you can see by that image that was just up there, is just a bit hopeless, really. He's like a sort of a bit pitiable, if anything.
For everybody that doesn't know the story of King Arthur, there's lots of good videos or movies out there on King Arthur. But King Arthur is one of the more historic movies ever made, and it's used in many, many other stories as the baseline. Star Wars is basically King Arthur, right?
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, with the although what is it? Is it King Arthur's dad? Or is it his son? Mordred. Is Mordred King Arthur's son, or I can't even remember. But yeah, it's like
Mordred is his brother, I think, in the story of King Arthur, isn't it?
I honestly can't recall. It's not acceptable as an Englishman to not know that. But yeah, obviously that's with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. Although that was spoiling it. It was spoiling Star Wars for people.
Well, if you haven't seen Star Wars yet, I'd spend the energy watching Star Wars if I'd watch that new Snow White show for sure. Yeah, Star Wars is actually a really good trilogy, and I watched it just recently. I watched the. I can't stand the new ones though when they kind of went back in time and kind of like I just sometimes I was just so weak, right? And I found that very very weak. So
I think it was just the writers were desperate to. They just it's like, all right, another Star Wars film. It's like how the hell are we going to do this? And it's like, obviously, get the time machine out. That's like, I mean, they did that with Star Trek as well, the reboot of Star Trek. But I thought that was actually quite good.
yeah, those I really like that Chris Pine. That was like Star Trek was my favorite kind of show. And there you go. They've had a few flops in there as well when they kind of did their Next Generation and all those kind of things. But we do thank you for watching Now Media. We've rebranded to Now Media. This is our parent company, which has been like that for many, many years. And our email addresses are Now Media. And we are trying to do, because we, again, lost with the first story we did. If you missed it, go back and watch it. Facebook and Instagram, which we had an audience of over 200,000. We've been banned from almost coming up on 2 years now. The Liberal government has said that news outlets were the only nation in the G7 that can't, probably in the G20 too, that does not allow news to be put on anybody's news on the platform, and that half the traffic for all news outlets, including the CBC, has been cut in half. But they get compensated for it, and they say they actually need more money. They want to increase their budget. They've asked for an increase in their budget from $1.44 billion, which was a record budget. They want to now increase it to by another $400 million. And then Pascal St. Onge, on her way out the door, has said, well, why stop there? Why not double your budget? Because CBC is an institution that needs to be protected. And then she was the heritage minister that's supposed to look after all media outlets, and she's not so much protective over independent media outlets. Because why would you want to protect independent media outlets? It's just a bunch of diverse voices like ours, and harder to control when we're not living off the government, suckling off the government, right?
We're also not. The most important thing is we're also not patriotic, are we? We basically hate Canada and we undermine Canada when we when we have opinions about Canada that aren't government approved. So that's why you go to CBC, which is the actual patriotic news outlet. And that's where you'll learn that Canada is irredeemably racist, has committed genocide, and is sexist and hates immigrants and all the rest of it. So get yourself on CBC, and that will make you love Canada, because then you'll learn how racist Canada is.
You've just witnessed some British sarcasm there. So for all you people that took that as like, you know, like you're going to go put that somewhere and saying that Ian says that we hate Canada, that's absolutely not true. What we do is fight for a better Canada for all of us and for our children. Ian has a couple of kids. I have 3 and grandchildren. We need to fight for a better tomorrow and a better Canada. That is our goal in this, and to provide you with information and knowledge from a more pluralist point of view. And we'd appreciate you subscribing, liking, sharing, especially, so that we can get our word out for Now Media. Any final thoughts for the weekend, Ian?
Well, I'll just add one thing to what you said. We also appreciate your comments, unlike the CBC, which really, really hates it when you say anything about what they do. They just want to be hidden away and can't be approached in their ivory tower. But as for the weekend, I mean, let's just keep our eyes on this election. I think I am what we talked about earlier about how the Conservatives are being told that they need to change now. Poilievre specifically needs to change his direction. I'm going to be looking out for that, because I actually happen to think that he will. I think he is going to change direction, and I think we're going to see him lay into Donald Trump a little bit. So, and it might be this weekend. So get ready for that.
I think the advice that we've been saying over and over again is just try to learn as much as you can in this election, and watch different outlets. Watch us, watch CBC, watch all of them, and try to watch it all with an open mind instead of like a preconceived conception of what it is. Just ask yourself, what's good for you, your family, in Canada, and go from there. And then, you know, like try to avoid just, you know, like the hate and the divisiveness and the rhetoric and the fear, right? Like, you know, if somebody's trying to instill fear in you, they're actually trying to manipulate you. So try to avoid the fear, and let's work for a better tomorrow. Canada is the richest nation in the world, and the wealth is beneath our feet, and it's been suppressed for 10 long years. It's time to unleash the beast and for the betterment of all Canadians. And with that said, we do thank you for watching Now Media, and we'll be back next week. We're on every day we try to be on at 9. It's about a 1-hour show. And we'll be back next week, and we hope you share this with your friends and family and get more people watching. And we love your comments. And like I said, Joe, a regular watcher and viewer, says our elbows are down, because Canadians are typically with their hand outstretched and say, you know, we're friendly. And there you go. And we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week, and have a great weekend.
We don't just report the news, we live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.